All right, welcome to another episode of Coffee with a Coach. I have my San Francisco cup because we're talking with Jeri Cates, a women's empowerment coach. And how did you just describe it?
The Courage and Grace Coach.
Courage and Grace coach. She's in northern coast of California, so I thought the San Francisco Cup was a good tribute to her. My wife and I when we used to go places when we didn't have kids, because we don't do that anymore. Every place we went, we would pick up a new cup. So welcome, Jeri. Welcome onto the show, and I'm super excited to have you on and talk to you about how do you empower women, how do you build courage and grace, how do you do that stuff. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. First, I want to say that I grew up in the Bay Area. So that cup is perfect. San Francisco Bay Area. I could see San Francisco, from the edge of the bay. So, yeah.
Yeah. I spent, in 2002, I spent a semester in Berkeley, living in Berkeley. I was finishing up. I had 19 units to finish when I was going to transfer in the spring. I had a football coach hook me up with, the rugby department. And I don't know if I had the grades. I probably didn't have the grades for Berkeley, but they had my stamp and I just needed to get past my classes. So I spent that time. And then 2016 to halfway 2017, I spent about a year and a half working at a mall as a marketing director for a property development company in the San Jose area. So spent a little bit of time, hanging out around there and all that stuff.
So that Campanile Tower at Berkeley.
Yeah.
So my granddaddy in the 60s was a custodian at UC Berkeley. And this is through sugar and LSD and crazy times,
Yeah.
When I was little, the guy that usually ran the tower was sick. Granddaddy would have to run it and we get to ride that thing all day long.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I grew up in the Bay Area. So that was really cool.
Obviously, so I showed up there and with a car and trying to park, and we're living in these crazy beat up apartments and parking's terrible there, right? So I eventually took it back because I kept getting tickets. And then, you'd either ride the bus or you go out at night and walk back. And my apartment was right around that park, right on was that Piedmont, right? The main street there. So you would have home. It was crazy walking through there, and you'd be it was crazy. So in the middle of the night, going home after a night out and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, not a time when you're, yeah. I lived in Vallejo, and I worked in a restaurant, and that's in the Bay Area. And at night I go home and I had all my tips on me, and I spiked my keys with one hand and had my kid in the other hand. I was a single mom. Anyway, yeah, we do whatever it takes. So, I said I was a courage and grace coach. So courage. Yeah. I was talking to a coach, and I just kept, after my husband passed away in 2016, I was using my coaching skills. I had been involved in Feminine Power, which is who I'm certified with, for a couple of years, for 3 years, I think, by then. And I lost, excuse me, I lost my train of thought. Lost him in 2016.
Yeah, after your husband, passed and all that.
Shoot.
It's all right. Here, let me ask you some questions. So, I know what it was.
Courage and Grace coach. I'm sorry. Yeah. I kept saying I moved through it with courage and grace. I had all these tools, but I didn't know how else to do it. Right. Yeah. And people were amazed at how calm I was after losing my husband. And I moved through it with courage and grace. So the coach said, I know, we'll call you the courage and grace coach. So I looked it up in a metaphysical dictionary. And courage is the strength to face adversity, emotional pain, and the unknown. And grace is the spirited freedom that arises from living in harmony with yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. So that works. So that says a lot.
So who do you actually, Courage and Grace coach, but like, who do you help?
So I help women who have had trauma, failed relationships. I come from a background of codependency. So and we don't always recognize it. Mine was overgiving, and not being able to receive, not allowing people to be there for me, not allowing, that. So that's my main client is the woman who is overgiving, and she might be successful. I'm a retired nurse practitioner. She might have a career and things are going fine in there, but then have relationships that are failed, or maybe they're codependent.
Yeah.
So yeah, to find yourself.
Yeah. So like, what are some, like, explain to us, because like, so codependency was a topic introduced to me like really young. I don't know if I was like probably from 7 to 12, right? My mom, right, like had this bad relationship and then went through down this like personal development path and all that. And then she had this book called Codependency No More. But for those people, and even today, like maybe I don't fully understand it. Can you explain to us like what codependency is and why is it, why is it bad? What does it cause within relationships?
Well, we put others first, right? And when I'm or I'm looking outside of myself for acknowledgement or love, right? There's a lot of dysfunction comes from codependency, and so it's dysfunction. You don't have healthy relationships, even with yourself, right? Okay. And it comes out of those milestones that were missed, these meanings we made of things, that I'm like, maybe I'm not safe. So in a relationship, I'm not safe. So what do? I attract people that I'm not safe with because I'm living in this fear. And it's, so codependency. There's so many nuances of it, but it's really putting others ahead of yourself. It's not feeling in alignment with yourself, not being able to love and support yourself and get the things that you need. We're looking outside ourselves for approval. Mine was, I was on pins and needles trying to keep this person happy, right? Always you get to be the jack of all trades. And that's from we have this thing called identity matrix in feminine power. Okay. And one of them, and they're false identities. I'm not enough. I'm not lovable. I'm invisible, are really three main ones, and if we're walking around with that false identity, so I have this false identity that I'm not enough. Well, that means I need to please everybody else. And, I don't deserve that, or I don't deserve, somebody wants to give me even a compliment and I'm deflecting it because I'm uncomfortable with it.
So it sounds like one of the things, a small, practice to put in is to actually accept, praise and not deflect.
Right. And how we do that, and I have this thing called the healing circle, and how we do that is help you connect deeper to yourself. And there's things like when you name a feeling, it is so powerful, so I like to tell my clients and students, when you feel triggered by something, ask yourself, what am I feeling?
Yeah.
And then, where's it from? Or, or what's my belief behind that? What do I believe? What am I feeling? I'm afraid. What's my belief? I'm not safe. Where'd I get that belief? I wasn't safe as a kid. Is it true now? It's not true now. So what's the new belief? And then helping them, have the freedom to create that new belief, right? And usually if the thing is I'm not enough, the part that needs to be healed is I'm more than enough, right? Okay. So your affirmative statement and your new way of being is that I'm more than enough. So we connect you to yourself, and the feelings and needs is so helpful because when you can name it, now you can do something with it, right? Yeah. So there's some self-soothing techniques that we do. in my coaching, I always offer a hypnotherapy appointment first before we do any work together, because it helps calm down the emotion.
Okay.
It really is powerful. And they realize that they can turn it down, that you can turn up happiness and all these other feelings, which you get to experience through the hypnotherapy session. But in the meantime, you're actually turning down that fear or whatever that feeling is. So you begin to feel like you have some control over it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what, what do you need to, what does a woman need to pay special attention to as we go through this process, or identify it, or come to an awakening to their current state?
The number one thing is be willing to do the work to connect to yourself. I like to look at my practice as we all have a tool belt, and we're putting different tools in our belt.
Okay.
And this one from a coach, where you're in the mirror for 3 to 5 minutes telling yourself, you just look at yourself and I love you. I love you. And it sounds like the craziest thing, and sometimes it's the hardest thing to get people to do. But when you start to connect with yourself, it softens. So number one is connecting with yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I think, it's such an odd thing that I don't know if any time in human, if we've ever been like this, or just something that's new, or if it's our current state of how we are, but everything's so outwardly focused that we're not taught to, focus inward. And maybe in other cultures they are, right? But, even the aspect of having that conversation with yourself, that, and then even the conversation of that, you can have a conversation with yourself, right? That this being that you are, physical, can have this multi-dimensional conversation with itself and in relationship, because it's not a part of our common communication or culture, right? You're not taught this.
Right. And the thing is that you're with you all the time. You need to be your number one cheerleader. Who is it? Mel Robbins has that new book, The High Five Habit. That's really cool to do that, to high five, because when you high five someone else, it gets your energy up. There's endorphins and things that go off. So when you do it to yourself, that can last you hours. And I love what she says about adding it on to another habit, like you brush your teeth every morning. So do it right after you brush your teeth. Or, I like to have a conversation with myself first thing in the morning, as soon as I can see myself in the mirror. And I learned that from Louise Hay, who was an author and, of motivation and spiritual work and a law of attraction. But to look in that mirror and say, I love you. It's like, no matter how you look, I love you. But I've done this mirror work with clients where I have them look in the mirror and say some affirmations that we've written based on what their words were, because it's really important. Like I said, using the opposite of it. But I have to really be in that space of patience and just gently nudge them through the whole exercise, because they want to quit. We look in the mirror, we don't see ourselves. We don't connect. Yeah.
So I want to kind of to ask, a little bit more about, so someone maybe that's watching this, listening to this, can be like, oh, that might be an issue that I'm dealing with right now. You know what I mean? Being this codependent person, and, so what are some of these, talking about self-pleasing, what are some other patterns or thoughts or beliefs, or that they can be like, oh man, I thought that's how it was supposed to be. I know throughout my life, I'm like, oh wait, this is a pattern that I'm in that I thought was normal, and then I was trying to do, right?
I would invite, well, I'll tell you a little bit about a client the other day. She didn't realize she was being abused. In the cycle of abuse, there's for instance, if somebody is controlling the money, controlling your time, going into your phone, understanding that those aren't healthy behaviors, right? So there was no physical abuse, but there was controlling behaviors, so the kind of women that I'm talking about have had some kind of experience in the past where, there's some low self-esteem or self-worth issues, and I want to help reconnect them to that. But going back to your question, we don't even always know. So if you're always doing for everyone else and no one's there to support you, that's a good, take a look. Are you alone? Do you have support? I had a kind of a crisis happen to me this week, and I had my emotional meltdown, and then I picked myself up and I reached out to my resources because I have tools in place. That woman doesn't have those tools in place or those support systems in place. So if they're stressed, overwhelmed, things are chaotic, they know there's something more, they can't quite put their finger on it, they're being run ragged. See, the thing is that we set this up. We set it up. We decide how people treat us by design or just effect, just letting it happen.
Or lack of boundaries. That kind of sounds like.
Oh, absolutely healthy boundaries. Like my lady that's working on, she hasn't decided that she wants to get a divorce or not, but her husband threw her out and she went and got an apartment. And of course, he was remorseful, but she went and got an apartment. And her idea is, I'm going to find me. I'm going to take care of me. And I would like this to work, but I'm going to take this year to really work on me.
Yeah.
She realized that was abuse, and it was stressful all the time, and she didn't understand, why or what the problem was. I think that when we can quiet the chaos, we can start to take a look at what's important. We can't figure out what's important when everything's flying in every direction.
Maybe, it sounds that they'd possibly be disconnected from a lot of their feelings, right? Like they would not really, they maybe emotionally shut down or something like that. Does that sound like, something that they'd be a part of, or,
that, or
like a symptom of like this process? Because maybe it's great to talk about this, but, maybe someone who's in that process, we could, they can be like, identify that, right? That symptom of it. And that's kind of like what we teach about marketing is like for you and your coaches is talking about the symptom, like that's immediate. Like I explained to somebody else the other day is like they, coaches provide orthotics, right? But all the client cares about is the foot pain that they're going through.
Yeah. So, okay.
I think it would be amazing, beneficial. Like what? Like I want to understand it, right?
Anxiety comes up. Anxiety. And it can be, I've had it to where it was pounding in my heart and radiating to my fingertips and toes.
Okay.
And I recommend people do tapping because it's, and I don't teach it, I recommend it. It's something to put in your tool belt, but immediately you can take it down a couple of notches, the anxiety, so someone who's got, anxiety,
Okay.
and maybe you have a history of depression and anxiety, and you're working on it and you just can't seem to heal the relationships in your life. There's a lot you can do. People will say, oh, I have anxiety, or I have, or I have depression and anxiety, as if it's I don't want to say a badge of honor, but as if it's who they are. Yeah. It's like a diabetes versus a diabetic. Well, it feels like I'm lost, or I'm, it's just the way it is. And I'd like to get people beyond that place of it's just the way it is, and taking some action. So they're feeling anxiety, their relationships aren't working. Maybe they're snapping, or people are snapping at them. They're saying things and regretting it. I used to say that my husband is alive today thanks to Al-Anon, because I wanted to freaking kill him. I mean, we all get mad, but it's what we do in that moment. Do we, and there's skills that we may have not learned, the lady, actually one lady who was always saying yes. Are you someone, my question would be, who's always saying yes to everything and then feels overwhelmed and regrets having to do things? That's a symptom of codependency, because I can't say no. It's poor boundaries, codependency, people pleasing.
Yeah. What do poor boundaries look like?
That somebody asked me to do something, and whether I have time for it or not, or can, or want to do it or not, I say yes, because I feel like I'm afraid I might be rejected. Okay. See, that's the thing about a healthy boundary. When you set it, it feels really uncomfortable at first. It's like building a new muscle.
Okay.
And when you change, the people around you change, because what they're doing no longer works, because we set it up in many ways, right? So at first, there's sometimes a little bit of flack, because you're not, what do you mean? You're not doing what you used to do. I mean, it's unsaid, it's just expected because we set that up. But as time goes on and you hold your boundary, which is, I'm not going to go back to those old ways. I'm going to be calm. I'm not going to say yes to everything. I tell people, instead of just saying yes, say, let me check and I'll get back to you on that. And then when you get back to them, you do go initiate getting back to them and tell them, no, that doesn't work for me. The idea is you get away from them so you can practice that, saying no.
Yeah, because like in that moment you feel pressured to just say yes and please somebody and go along with it when you really haven't, right? Like it sounds like, I think I've experienced this throughout my life, like being this people pleaser, like all that stuff. It serves me and it doesn't serve me, so I can understand that, in that moment, like, you're not considering your side of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're at and how the consequences of it, positive or negative, if you do say yes.
Right. Because, and why do we say yes? Because we want to please them. I think I was 20 years old and fresh out of that codependency of childhood, right? And one of my colleagues, I worked at a place called the Capwells. It was like a big fancy department store. And I made clothes, and someone would say, one of the coworkers would say, oh, that's really cute. I want you to make me one. And I kept saying yes all the time. And this gal says, why do you do that? Yeah. You can't possibly do all of what you're committing to. I never forgot that. That's decades ago. Yeah. That was huge. But we do that because we want to please. We lose ourselves. So my number one thing is to reconnect you with yourself and connect you in ways like never before, because it's life-changing. These tools that Tammy, my client, says, these are life-changing tools. I have these for the rest of my life. So
what do you find that causes, this codependency, this people pleasing?
Well, I can speak from my case where there was abuse, and the abused child wanted to make the abuser happy so she could stay out of trouble, and then you get so busy developing those skills of people pleasing, you become a jack of all trades, right? So I love in the some of the literature I have from Feminine Power, you can flip that around to, I have many skills. Right. You can take those old skills and maybe I'm intuitive for other people. Now I can turn that toward myself. I can utilize those things for myself and start to feel what that feels like. Yeah. Build that muscle. So the idea is to love yourself. Part of self-love is to have self-care. And it's more than having a massage. It's caring for yourself well enough so that you're there to take care of others from your overflow, We don't do it that way, but it's a new way of showing up. And I love to do this. Now I do this with women. I say, show up as a woman who is loved. Now just take that on, show up as a man who is loved.
And what does that look like? What would that, like, how would you know that you've arrived at showing up, as a man or woman that is loved? Like, what
it's
is
a practice.
Yeah, but like, what is that? Like, let's say I practice, like, for instance, if I go and lift weights, eventually my muscles are going to develop and my abilities are going to develop, right? So like you'd be able to see from the outside, what that looks like.
Mm-hmm. Oh, if you show up as a woman or a man that's loved, it's an internal thing, Anthony. It's powerful. I'll share a little story. So I was in Feminine Power, and it was the first course I ever took. And they said, if you want love in your life, show up as a woman who's loved. Step into that, feel what that feels like. And I thought that month, wow, show up as a woman who's loved. That's better than fake it till you make it. Because how would I treat myself if I knew I was loved, right? So even in that space, I was treating myself better. Well, 30 days later, I reunited with my husband after 39 years.
Wow.
So it's powerful, yeah, it's powerful. So show up as a woman who's loved, show up as a man who's loved. It doesn't really change necessarily on the outside. It's the inside and how you connect with yourself. How would I show up if I knew I was loved unconditionally? Have that conversation with yourself. How would I show up? How would I carry myself? What would I do? A lot of times I'll go to the gym because I think, well, a woman who's loved, I go take care of myself.
Yeah, that was kind of like my next question. Like, what would be the number one thing like you would recommend, like in practicality? Women's like, oh, they're listening to you. They're like, yeah, this sounds like me, like I'm codependent. I'm a people pleaser, like, and this self-care. So it sounds like maybe the gym or something there, gets, it sounds like it would be, what would be that number one thing, to get started and have some quick wins and stuff? I know you talked about the mirror exercise.
I really think the mirror exercise and some I am statements consistently, and I like to tell people, look, gamify it. Every day you do it on the calendar, put a star or something that indicates you did it. And here's the most important part. Woohoo! Yeah. Right. So I know it takes like 50 something days to build a habit, but back when I read this book 40 years ago, they said it takes 21 days to build a habit. Well, you can get a pretty good groove going with 21 days. So the idea is to do it every day for 21 days and mark it off. And if you fall off, you have to start over again. And the first 3 days are the most challenging. I won't say the hardest, I'll say the most challenging. But once you get over that hump, you start to go, oh, this isn't so bad. And, so gamifying it. And then what you realize is that, wow, that carries me through the day. I'm making better decisions for myself, because our number one relationship needs to be with ourselves. Whether we want to have a relationship with someone else, with God, whatever, we've got to have that relationship with ourselves. Bring God into it, or your higher power, or whatever. But that first relationship has to be with ourselves. Putting others first is what gets us in trouble. Even on an airplane, and we've heard this so much, they say, even if that's your child next to you, you take that oxygen first so that you can make wise decisions, Yeah.
Like there's a saying that a mentor of mine that repeated over and over again that like I've had to consider and share a lot with my mom, because she does do this, and I've just seen her over the course of her life, like, and get burned because she's trying to be a savior, right?
Mm.
And this saying is, saviors get crucified.
Ooh.
So, leaders, there's a difference between a leader and a savior. A savior will get crucified. So like, my mom, she always tries to like save and rescue people. Cannot stop it, justifies it, but I have to keep telling her, like, you got to realize that saviors get crucified. Like, you go over and above and go beyond those boundaries. You're going to get hurt. You're going to come out a lot of times looking like the bad guy, even though your intentions are in the right place.
It blows up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What would you say to a woman like who's nervous, who's identified themselves and like, oh man, this is me, with getting started going down this path, like, of healing and becoming this loved woman, right? This woman that shows up, she is loved. Like, what would you say to that woman? And I have kind of a similar question, but I'll wait till you're done with this one.
So, how to get on the path of healing?
Like, if they're nervous about it, they're nervous about getting started, down the path of healing.
I have a healing circle that's free on the first and third Tuesday. So there's an opportunity to experience some exercises and things, but make an appointment with me. Let's have a free consultation. Let's find out, what you really want, and what's in the way, and, and get a plan for dealing with it, for turning it around, get your tool belt on and start filling it up.
Yeah. And then what about like, the thought of like, doing it themselves or trying to go down the path themselves versus like actually working with somebody like yourself who's been certified, who's gone through all this other stuff like that, what would you say to that person? Like if they were like, I can just do it myself.
Well, I've done a lot of it on my own or myself. And it wasn't until I got some structure, and some understanding of what was really happening. But the thing is that we can't become ourselves by ourselves. We need each other. We need and that's from Feminine Power, Claire, the founder. We cannot become ourselves by ourselves. There's something powerful when someone's holding space for your possibility and your accountability. Yeah. And if you're a codependent, where in the way that you're over giving to others, having someone that you're accountable to can be very powerful in forming your own skills for yourself. Yeah. And I think like too is, like if you were able to fix your foot pain already, you would have already fixed it. Like that's the first thing. Mm-hmm. And then finding the right coach that aligns with the problem you're doing. I mean, that's why, coaching kind of within the marketing and coaching community gets kind of like a bad rap and, like all this other stuff as far as like everybody's trying to be a coach. But, I do think there's a person's problem. And then there's a guide, and kind of think about it as that. If you go back to our last interview with that, I had this explanation about the guide and servant leadership and all that. But for instance, with that foot pain analogy, maybe you don't need orthotics. Maybe it's something in your back, but you're with the wrong coach, AKA doctor, talking to the podiatrist. And he's like, your foot's fine. You're like, but my foot hurts. Like, no, you just need to, you know what I mean? Like that. Like, there's a lot of, you're misaligned with coaches. So it's important to find that. So, Yeah. And I think that when you find someone that helps you shift, when you find someone that helps you question your old assumptions, that's where transformation happens. Yeah. So you really have to be I have to be in that space of understanding or empathy. I've been homeless. I've been abused. I've been divorced, and I've lost my husband. And there's a whole bunch more that I won't go, but I'm saying that these life experiences, along with being a nurse practitioner and helping people with their problems, is all part of this. And what I've learned is that we need each other. We need support, especially if we're codependent, where we're putting others first and not taking care of ourselves. It's a new muscle. If you're right-handed, try writing with your left hand. Well, after a while, you'd get pretty good at it. Yeah. Yeah. It's little baby steps. I like to look at it like this, and this is from my feminine power training too, but you have your big vision, and that's like your North Star. And about 3 to 6 months out is the horizon line. And right here, you're in your boat, and you're focused on what's in front of the boat. You got your eye on the horizon line and your big vision. So it's always, what's my next step? What's my next step in alignment with my horizon line and with my vision? And maybe it's that I want healthy relationships where, or a healthy relationship where we meet on many levels, positive and happy. What is it you want, right? You want peace. That was one of my clients wanted. The chatter was so negative at home. She wanted peace. So she went and created peace. What do you want? Yeah.
Awesome. So, I know you help out. You have a bi-weekly little get together, meetup, virtual meetup, and you call it the Healing Circle. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's an hour. It's a powerful hour, and it's for women. And we set the container. We do a meditation to go from ordinary awareness into extraordinary awareness. We talk about what our intention is. There's some shared agreements, because all of these things create a safe container. Then I have all the women introduce themselves and what their intention is for the class, because if you have an intention, you'll get more out of it. And then we'll do exercises like we did this feelings and needs exercise. Or one time we talked about your idea of being a co-creator with a higher power. Well, we had to have that conversation of what's a higher power, and everybody's opinion and beliefs was honored. Everybody got to talk about what they believe in God, or what that was about. And it opened the space up for us to see ourselves as co-creator. Right. We did a meditation on being a co-creator with that higher power, with God, the universe, whatever. And there was a shift, right, from the old way of thinking to realizing that I'm in on this creation called my life. Right. I have some power here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So how could, I know you have a free giveaway, a little, you have a little lead magnet and all that stuff. We call it in coaching. Like what is that like, and how can they get a hold of it?
So it's 5 supercharges or 5 mind shifts to supercharge your self-confidence.
Okay.
And you can just go to Jeri Cates at Hotmail, or sorry, Jeri at Jeri Cates. Oh, wait, slow down. JeriCates.com. I think it's right under that one. JeriCates.com. And it's really cool because you get the video, or you'll get a couple of videos in the emails. One is on energy leaks and 3 steps to authentic self-love. So there's some great lessons in there. But the 5 supercharges for your self-confidence, one of them is I am 100% responsible for what I say, what I think, what I feel, and what I do. And there's a little discussion about taking that on. But yeah, there's some powerful tools, and it starts with your self-esteem, self-worth, self-confidence.
Awesome. Well, cool. Any final words before we sign off? Like any messages you want, or special message you have?
Not really. Just I've already said my courage and grace thing. Yeah. What was it? Courage is the strength to face emotional pain and the unknown, and grace is the spirited freedom that arises from living in harmony with yourself. Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
thanks.
I appreciate you being on, and I wish you the best. And obviously, we're helping you out inside our services, and going from there. So. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And thanks for being on this another episode of Coffee with the Coach.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye. Bye.